It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show, only on Secular Media Network.
Hello, everybody. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. It is show number 160, and a little later on, we will have an interview with Mark White. He is the bassist for the musical group called the Spin Doctors, and he is also a speaker at the upcoming Reason Rally, June 4th, so hopefully you can be there for that. I myself recently got back from Nashville, Tennessee, a little conference they put on there in under 2 months, from the seed of an idea and getting a keynote speaker up until the time of the event. 2 months. So if you're thinking about putting on an event, probably the biggest thing you need is a couple of motivated leaders and a whole lot of people who want to volunteer and help out. It was an amazing collaborative effort, and the coolest thing of all was it was in a public high school. And I was surprised, quite honestly, because I looked. There was not a lot of crosses. Matter of fact, I saw no crosses, no Jesus, no nothing in Nashville, Tennessee. So it can be done, folks. You can have secular schools. So my compliments to the local school district for doing their job correctly, at least to the parts that I could see. And, of course, thank you for being fair in your treatment to the citizenry, and anyone can rent out the school. So, once again, congratulations to all of the folks in and around Nashville, Tennessee, and Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Multiple groups came together to make this happen, and it's one of those things that I love when different groups can work together. They can follow slightly different paths from time to time, but when necessary, they come together, just like the Reason Rally. So again, if you missed it, too bad, but it was great fun. It was my pleasure to be there, to be a sponsor, and to be giving a workshop. Later today in the show, we are going to talk to Mark White. We mentioned that, and we'll get to that later. But before I'll do that, I wanted to go over some stuff about saving for college. And probably one of the more controversial things that I tell people is to not save for your kids' college education. I mean that a little tongue-in-cheek, but not so much. And I'm going to go through the steps of why that is. And before I can do that, I've got to go over a lot of the rules. The first thing that you have to do is fill out a form called FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A. Now, we did this ourselves for a couple of years when our kids started college, and it comes up with a complicated calculation of how much you can pay for college. I will have to eagerly admit that I was stunned at the amount of money they thought I could come up with for college. So I am not necessarily the average income kind of person, but they clearly weren't going to help out. The only thing that we did qualify for, I think, was one relatively lower interest student loan if we wanted to take it. I'm thinking it was Stafford, but I might not even have that right. And it was 5 or 6%. And, it's nice. It helps. Helps pays the bills if that's something you want to do. Like I said, there's a lot of things that go into this. Probably the single most important thing is your income. And there's a deductible, and then there's a low rate, and then there's a higher rate, and it goes all the way up to 47% of your income once you get over a certain threshold. And I think that threshold is around 50 or 60,000. It starts to say you can pay 47% of your income. So if you make over 100,000, odds are you're not going to qualify for much. You should still do the FAFSA because a lot of colleges and universities at least pull data from this form, and it is a little time consuming. But if you want any kind of aid whatsoever, you're going to need to do this. The student's income can be counted as half being available for spending. So if they make $10,000 working the past year, doing something part-time or semi-full-time or working real hard, they make $10,000. That means they have $5,000 available for college. If you make $200,000, it won't quite be $100,000 because of the deductibles and stuff, but they might say you have 30, 40, 50, 60,000 available per year for college. So you can quickly see how you can, according to their calculation, you have more available than what the school is going to cost, so therefore you don't qualify for aid because you have plenty of income. Another thing that people can do that is often a mistake is they will create an account for their minors, their children, and universal gift for minor accounts, things like that, and put money in there. Every dollar that's in there that's saved, 20% is assumed to be available for the student to use to spend. So if you've hidden money away from your taxes and put it in your child's name, again, that money is assumed available to pay for college. Parents' assets, investments accounts, bank accounts generally count at a strange rate of 5.64%. So if you have $100,000 sitting in the bank, they assume that you can take $5,640 out to help pay for college. So most people don't have $100,000 sitting in the bank, but if you do, it probably means you have a good income, or at least you had a good income. And of course, if your income suddenly changes a year or two before college, that can throw up red flags, and they can dig into your calculations a little bit more. So a lot of people will use, or they're told to use, 529 plans. Now, 529 plans, according to the FAFSA and the federal government, the money in them does not count. So if you put $100,000 in there, it is assumed that zero of that is available for college, which I think is hysterical because that's the express intent of the 529 plan. A couple little caveats with that. One, if that 529 plan is a prepaid college plan, it will count dollar for dollar as money for school. I had a friend a few years ago that prepaid through College Illinois 4 years of college for his daughter, and then went to apply for aid, and they pretty much laughed him out of the office because there's no better way to prove that you don't need any money for college than to pay for the entire 4 years in advance. You are not going to qualify for a whole lot of things right off the bat. So there's a potential problem with that. One nice thing for parents is that 401k and IRA contributions are assumed to be for your retirement only, and therefore are not available for paying college bills, and therefore are counted at 0% being available to pay for the young sprouts' college education. So again, saving as much as humanly possible in 401ks and IRAs can really get that money set aside so it doesn't count, and you might qualify for more aid. You can also have other relatives or grandparents often can create a 529 for a student, and that also does not count except when the money comes out. So if it's not immediate family money, so let's say Grandpa puts $100,000 in a 529, just to make the math easy for me. In the first year, you take out $25,000 to pay the first year's college bills. That is then considered to reduce the amount of aid you need by next year up to $12,500. So if you somehow did qualify for an $8,000 or $10,000 aid, you will not get it the second year. So often they will tell people, don't use that money until senior year. Well, if you don't use it until senior year, that means you have to have some bills outstanding or debts outstanding, or you have to borrow money. And kind of what's the point of saving 4 years of money if you can't use it? And so that kind of leads us into some of the other problems with a 529. One is that they often have supplemental fees. Not generally too bad, but if you don't have a whole lot of money in there, $20, $50, or $100 a year or quarter can put a crimp on your returns. Another thing is they are usually state by state. And depending on the state that you're in, you may have tax advantages for using your specific state. However, the returns provided by the funds that are in your state plan may suck. So, as we've talked about on the show over and over and over, the average mutual fund underperforms the market by 2 to 2.2%. 529 plans are no different, except for that they might be a little worse on average. Some plans are better than others, but there's that problem because the investment company knows that you're going to put the money in for a few years. You're probably, if you're an average person, not going to put that much in because you're not going to save for college well enough. And if you do, you're the exception. So the fees are a little higher, the costs are a little higher, the performance is a little less. Another problem you may have is that if your student does not go to college or gets a scholarship, you may face a 10% penalty to take the money out, and any money that comes out that is not used for a qualified expense will be added onto your income in the year in which you take it out, and you will have to pay your marginal tax rates. So maybe when you're in your 20s or early 30s or even pushing 40 and you're saving for the college education, you're avoiding a little bit of tax, but when it comes out, hopefully, as life has gone along, you're making more money, and your tax rate is likely higher. So you avoided a lower tax to only pay a higher tax later. Now, if you have 3, 4, 5 children, you can change the name of the child on the account. And that, of course, makes the FAFSA all that much more complicated. But if you only have 1 or 2 and they're good at a sport, or they can play piano really well, or they get a great ACT score and they get really big scholarships, you may not need or want to have the money in there. You may not need it for college, and then you've got to pull it out. Now, of course, they will always tell you could always assign any other child to that account. You can. You can reassign it to your nieces and nephews, but not everybody wants to do that. You can do that, so there is that feature. So that's another problem. Yet another problem with saving money for college is that the FAFSA is only one way of calculating how much money you have available. That's the government's method, and that information is given to any school you ask to get it. Any school that you're considering going to will often ask for it. However, the schools are not under any legal requirement to follow the rules of FAFSA when calculating how much aid they want to give you. All that stuff I just talked about is for federal aid. Now, if you go to a private school, often they have a really high inflated price, and they give more allowances and discounts to people that need the money. They will take the information from the FAFSA form, but they can use it any way that they see fit. So as you might imagine, a university with a large endowment, but not large enough to give everyone free tuition, has to make choices about who gets money and who doesn't. So 2 students that are equal in all ways, except for one has $0 in their 529, and another one has $100,000 in their 529, who do you think they're going to be more likely to give the aid to? So again, you might hurt your ability for your student to get aid by having money in the 529. That is not necessarily true of all universities, but how do you know that when your child is 4, when you start saving? Your child ends up going to the perfect school. It turns out that they do count the 529 money that has the child's name on it as being available for paying the college bills, because that's what it's fucking there for, and you lose out the chance of aid. So those are some of the problems. Another thing that I want to cover is the mathematics of the investing. And so if you don't accept some or all of the previous things that I've said, it may not matter. because I've got one more trick up my sleeve that you need to think about for college savings.